Okay, and so now we're going to move right into our program. So let me introduce our speaker today. Our speaker is Lee Shainis. Intercambio was born from a desire to connect immigrants and volunteer teachers in Boulder County to lift lives and strengthen their community. Lee Shainis and Sean Camden learned that language was a huge barrier, but not the only one. Immigrants expressed feelings of deep loneliness and alienation. They also possessed great talents that were underutilized in our community. At that same time, volunteers were excited to teach English and connect with newcomers. So they created a simple, safe platform to connect these segregated populations through English classes. So since then, Intercambio has grown to a national teaching organization, which is just amazing. So Lee loves creating opportunity for people from different cultural backgrounds to connect, bond, and learn deeply from each other. He co-founded Intercambio, Uniting Communities, Intercambio, a nonprofit in 2001. Intercambio has created access for 5,000 volunteers to become great English teachers in Boulder County, which has created opportunities for 10,000 adult immigrants from 60 plus countries to take effective one-on-one and group English classes. Intercambio has created an exciting national network of 600 adult ESOL programs, including schools, refugee agencies, prisons, churches, and libraries to whom they provide curriculum consulting and training. Welcome, Lee.
Thank you. Thank you. That's my presentation. Any questions? Okay. Actually, I do have a presentation. I'm going to share it. Okay. All right. Can I get a couple thumbs up? People see that? All right. Excellent. So thank you for having me. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces and friends I haven't seen in a while. I have a full agenda for the next few minutes. The agenda I have is to talk a little bit about Intercambio 101, which Sally covered part of that. Then I'm going to try something. I'm going to try to have you have a little conversation in small groups around a topic that we've been exploring a lot recently, which is cultural humility. And then I'll go back to Intercambio and talk about how life is different in the digital and online world. And then we'll talk about some ways that you can be part of actual solutions. And then I think we'll have some time for questions and answers at the end. So Intercambio, we've been around for 20 years now. This is our 20th year. We had no idea what we were doing at the beginning, but it worked, and it keeps growing, and it's just so needed. We've had 10,000 adult English learners from 65 countries. So as you've heard, for those of you doing the math, still thinking that we only work with Spanish speakers, there are people from all over the world. There aren't 65 Latin American countries. About 75% of our students are from Latin America, and then the others are from all over the world. And then we've had 5,000 volunteers teaching one-on-one and in groups at public facilities, at immigrants' homes. All of that is online now. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And really, what we talk about is we open doors. We create opportunities for people. Learning English is not easy, and people have to work super hard to really achieve their goals, whatever their goals are. And a lot of the goals that people achieve are lasting goals. Things like, the ability to communicate and rely less on interpretation at places like with doctors or dentists or with their kids' teachers and things like that. We see great results around that. People getting better jobs, getting paid more at their jobs. People who stick with our program for a long time see about 40% end up making more at their jobs, an average of like $3 more per hour, which is significant for a lot of people. They get involved more in their kids' education. That's a big reason why people come here, so that their kids can have opportunities for education that they didn't have. So the kids of our adult students often have higher graduation rates from high school than their peers, because one of the reasons their parents are more involved. Civic engagement, we see a lot of our students serving on boards, working at other nonprofits, volunteering in the community, just becoming more involved, getting the confidence to do that. And then emotional health is a key thing too. A lot of people experience isolation, and being a part of the Intercambio community, really any community, is key to getting out of depression and feelings of isolation and feeling like I belong here. And then partnering with the community is key. We partner with a lot of organizations in this community doing great work to also expand opportunities. So, we've got thousands of stories from individuals. I was just going to highlight 3 quick ones. This is Gabriela on the left with her son and her teacher. And Gabriela started with Intercambio four years ago. came to us really down, really depressed, learned a lot, connected, and now she's working at Pioneer Elementary School. She worked with Intercambio to help us spread the word and get immigrants signed up with the census. She's volunteered with the police department. She's doing a lot of great stuff, and now says, I'm taking on the world. This is Alma. Alma's a student and also a program manager at Intercambio now. So we have three students of ours who are now on our staff. And we also offer citizenship classes. And each year about 80 people take our citizenship classes and go on to pass the citizenship exam to become citizens. Unfortunately, not all of our students are eligible, but for those who are, we offer that opportunity. And Alma is one who got that recently. And then this is a picture of me with Edgar Jr. So Edgar Jr.'s parents were one of our first students 20 years ago, and they are house cleaners and some of the most dedicated, passionate people I've ever met. They were extremely involved in their kids' education, and Edgar Jr. recently graduated with a full ride scholarship from the University of San Diego, and his sister is now at Claremont McKenna, also on a scholarship. So we see lots of stories like that with first generation kids going to college and really just transforming the future. So the social integration is the other piece of what we do. And, English classes provide really unique opportunities for people from different nationalities, different races, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different ages, different everything to come together and really, get to know each other, have real conversations, and form real strong bonds that are different from people who are, in our comfort circle. And when you do that, when we have these conversations, our curriculum fosters a lot of really interesting conversations about cultural differences. When you do that, we all have biases. It kind of starts to reduce those biases. It increases how we reflect and understand our own culture and our awareness of how other people see the world. And that also is really crucial for empathy, which is really important when we talk about immigrant integration. So you heard a little bit about our national impact. So we're working with refugee resettlement agencies, churches, prisons, lots of groups providing adult English classes. We're trying to make it as easy as possible for them to have the tools and training to do a great job and grow their programs, because a lot of communities don't have high quality adult English programs, so people have no options. It also generates revenue for the organization, because one of our goals is to become financially sustainable so we don't have to ask for donations for our entire existence. So we sell curriculum, and it accounts for about 25% of our budget. And we're also really initiating a lot of conversations around mutual learning and shifting power imbalances. A lot of the language we hear in adult English education is about how we help immigrants, but we want to shift the narrative to talk about how do they help us? What are we learning as well? How is the dominant culture learning from our interactions? I'll talk a little bit more about that, but it's exciting to start facilitating those conversations more. So I'm going to transition a little bit. So we also lead what we call cultural humility workshops for the community. We've led about 100 of these for different organizations, and we really love sparking conversations about cultural differences, how we can learn more about our differences, how we can become less judgmental of people who see things differently from us. And cultural humility is this term that we've latched onto recently. A lot of times we hear about cultural competence, which is learning about others' cultures, so like I know how to not offend people when I'm eating in China, or, I understand that people see time differently in Latin America in general than they do in the US, or I know how to not offend people in Turkey by showing them the bottom of my feet. Those are cultural competence tools, important, really good to know. But cultural humility is a little different. It's this lifelong process of self-reflection, really understanding where our perspectives come from and challenging those, and also really recognizing the history of things as well. So really examining our own cultural beliefs, our own identities, and using that to be able to learn more about other people's cultures and ourselves at the same time. So we talk, I hear this word assimilate a lot in our work, like, oh, Intercambio is working to assimilate immigrants. And I'm like, that's kind of a bad word in our world these days. The word assimilate has a lot of kind of racist undertones and history to it. So it's not about, getting them to adapt to our way. It's really about learning about each other's ways and seeing them as different and not better or worse. So I'm going to try an activity here. So first, I'm going to give you 5 statements, and I want you to quickly think, do I agree or disagree with this statement? Okay, don't think about it too much. All of them depend on circumstances. But all right, when I enter a meeting or a class late, I enter it quietly. Okay, think about that. Agree, disagree. Number 2, it's rude to interrupt someone while they are talking. You agree or disagree with that? Making eye contact shows that you are paying attention. Okay, quick thought. Agree, disagree. Saying hi to strangers is important for the community. Is that something you agree or disagree with? It's okay to ask someone you meet, what do you do for work? Okay, those are 5 quick examples of, these are things that we talk about in our curriculum because we like to spark conversations about this stuff. The activity I want to do now is I'm going to try to put you into groups of 3. I'm going to give you about 6 minutes. So each person will have, 1 to 2 minutes to share. And I want you to pick one of these that you agreed or disagreed with, one that was pretty clear for you, and why you think you felt that way. Why did you agree with it? Why did you disagree with it? What were some of your values that led to that? And why might others feel differently about that? So for instance, number 1, I'll use that as an example. When I enter a meeting or class late, I enter quietly. This comes up at Intercombio a lot, where students who come in late, they don't just go quietly sit at their seat. They'll greet each student individually and say, oh, hi Jenna, hi Lucia, hi. And the teachers are often like, it drives me crazy. It's disrupting the class. It's disrespectful. So the teachers often interpret that, but really the students come in with a different cultural value. So they would think it's rude not to do that. So, we have our lens here. So I want you to think about kind of what is your lens for one of these. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to think about it, and I'm going to organize some breakout rooms. If you want to just also talk about, if you're still just loving that term, cultural humility, you've seen that for the first time, you want to talk about that, you can talk about that. I just want to get you all talking and sharing with each other. So let me try this. I'm going to get it down to 3 people per group. All right, perfect. So everyone got a thumbs up? You ready for this? Okay, if you have your video off, turn your video on. It's better to talk to faces than just names. But if you can't, I totally understand. All right, so you got 6 minutes. I'll see you back here in 6 minutes. Enjoy the conversation, and I will try to put those things in the little chat too. All right, ready, go. So if you're just coming back, you can, if you had some thoughts or things you want to share, you can write something in the chat, something that emerged for you, something you heard, something you learned about yourself, something you reflected on. So for instance, all of these could be 30 to 60-minute conversations. Each one of those questions we really dive into in our cultural workshops. But that was just a little quick one. But, like with, interruptions, a lot of times people are like, yeah, I hate interruptions. It's really rude. And then, but when you dig down, it's like, oh, there's a lot of cultural values that determine my answer, right? So I was an only child. I never had to interrupt people to be able to talk. But if you have 10 siblings, then maybe it's just a normal thing for you. Eye contact might depend on what country you're from and how that's seen. Is it seen as something respectful or disrespectful? Asking someone, what do you do for work? That was always like a fair game question for me. A good question. What's a good alternative for what do you do for work? A good alternative for what do you do for work is how do you spend your time? Or, what do you like to do? That's one that is generally, a universal way to ask that. Yeah, because some people don't like that question. What do you do for work? They feel like it's, setting you up to be judged. Oh, you just do that? Really? So yeah, great. All right, I will go back to my screen, continue writing your thoughts in the chat of things that came up for you. Again, that was just a 5-minute version of a 3-hour conversation, but just to give you a little teaser. I will go back to my session here and keep writing in the chats. Boom, 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 boom. So yeah, our responses, our quick agree, disagree is deep-rooted stuff. It's has to do with our race, our nationality, our income, our age, our gender, our sexual orientation. All these different aspects of our culture and our personality affect how we answer those questions. And the important thing is to be able to acknowledge, to reflect, to have a cultural humility to say, okay, I see it this way, and that's not necessarily the right way or the wrong way. And I'm interested in learning, why do people see it differently? what are their deep-rooted cultural values behind this question? So that was a quick thing. Back to Intercambio. So COVID times, our classes have changed. Our program has completely changed. A lot of doors have closed. Some doors have opened. Back in February, if you looked at our numbers, we had about 600 students actively taking classes in groups and one-on-one facility and one-on-one at their homes. Now it's about 300, which is actually really good given the challenges that we've discovered. So what have we learned about online classes with English learners? 90% had never taken an online class before. So it takes extra effort from our team, our staff, to equip people with the confidence and the tools to be able to take a class on Zoom than it is to be able to come in person, which they've done before. Now, actually, this is a surprise. A lot of people, students and teachers, actually prefer online classes now because mostly for the convenience, but also there's a different level of intimacy with the online classes. You can see my background. You can see, the crib in the background. You can see people's kids walking by and meet their family a little bit easier. So there's a lot of benefits, and for a lot of people, it's the only way they can attend classes. We still use our curriculum because a lot of our students use phones for their class. So this way they can see the teacher and still work out of a book. So they're not trying to do all these activities on a little screen. So we found that that's super important. And the most important is we've learned that connection is still possible via Zoom. I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this with the Rotary group, but we've experienced it tremendously with our English learners that, people are really getting to know each other still and feeling those bonds, even though we're not able to touch each other, still having deep conversations. So that's been really encouraging. A lot of people have also asked, how are your students doing in general with COVID and everything? And it's a mix. We're really reaching out to people a lot and offering support and resource referrals. There's a lot of great resources in our county that we want to make sure people know about and they feel safe accessing those. As far as, people's job status and financial stability, it's kind of all over the place. Some people are doing fine. Some people are struggling. Unfortunately, a lot of our students, we don't ask for documentation status. But we do know that a lot of them are not eligible for like unemployment benefits. And there's a big difference for people who can't access those. A lot of our students don't have a lot of savings. So, we're a bit concerned about what's coming in the next six to 12 months. Businesses are starting to close more. A lot of our students work in the restaurant, hotels, some of those businesses that have been hardest hit. So we're a bit concerned, but up until now, we haven't talked to a lot of people who are in dire circumstances. And we have a lot of exciting new stuff happening that this online world has opened doors that we never imagined and new ways to get people involved, including you all. So one of those is our community conversations. We've been doing these for a couple of years. And what we do is in the middle of every term, we bring in 30 volunteers and we match them up with our students, and you have conversations speed dating style. We give you a 30-minute orientation training. Here's the questions you can ask. Everything else is fair game. And you talk to anywhere from 3 to 9 students in a 1-hour period. And it's great. You get to know people. It's just an amazing connection. It's easy. And it helps people build their confidence speaking English, because a lot of our students, that's their main gap is like, all right, I'm taking classes, but I still can't talk to people in the community. So this is a way to get people connected. And we have those online now. So it's even less of a commitment. You don't have to drive anywhere. So I highly encourage that for anyone who wants to, connect with immigrants in our community, talk to people, and support their language learning process. And we're also starting a new project, a collaboration with this national group, the Common Good Collective, to have conversations on race for English learners, which is going to be really interesting because a lot of English learners want to know more, but the general conversations aren't really geared towards English learners. So we want to do specific conversations for them. So hopefully you all will see information about that in the coming months as well. Another exciting thing we're doing is we created a new platform. So it's a website, CC English. And the idea here is that it can connect a volunteer anywhere in the country with a student, an English learner anywhere in the country. There's millions of people who want to be taking English classes and who want to be volunteering, but the program doesn't exist in their community, so they can't do anything. This is going to really balance that access, and by balancing the supply and demand, where, in a community like Boulder, we have a lot of volunteers. A community, let's say, this community in Alabama might have a lot of people who want to learn English, but no volunteers and no English programs. So we could potentially, match volunteers in Boulder with students in Alabama, which, we think we can reach tens or hundreds of thousands of people by creating this access. And it's still curriculum backed. We want to make it easy for volunteers to be able to come in and be great teachers without prepping classes, for a long time. And there's lots of other resources for people. So that's it. Some doors have closed and lots of others are opening fast, and we're learning, we're partnering like never before. It's a real crazy time, but it's also an exciting time. We're trying to see the silver linings and keep people connected as much as possible. When COVID is done, we're still going to be doing a lot online and in person. So it's really changed us a lot. So yeah, thank you again. Support our growth, volunteer, come to community conversations, spread the word. We really want to engage more people in this important effort to bridge cultural divides.
Great.
So,
all right. Thank you very much, Lee. We do have a few questions, and I want to remind everyone to write your questions in the chat, and we'll go ahead and prioritize them. And when it's your turn, we'll have you unmute and ask your question. So the very first question goes to Lena.
Hi, Lee. It's great to see you.
Give me an easy one, Lena. Give me an easy one.
Well, you really kind of answered it with your last slides, but you are so entrepreneurial, and you've always been an innovator. It's been so much fun to see how Intercambio has evolved. What are your big dreams for the organization? What would you love to be able to do?
Yeah, we want to create access for anyone in the country and eventually the world to have these types of connections, provide the structure, make it safe, make it fun, make it impactful. So, we're really excited about this platform and the conversations on, the community conversations and spreading those throughout the country. Because there's just, I think a lot of people, especially right now, they want to have cross-cultural interactions, meaningful interactions, but without a structure, we don't do it. So we want to be the place that, like, okay, you want to do this? You want to have a meaningful conversation with immigrants? You want to connect with, native English speakers? Boom, here's the platform. We make it easy. It's affordable. Anyone can do it. So we just envision all of these cross-cultural connections all over the world happening.
I'm going to tag on to Lena's question, Lee. It's just great to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Do you have to have a background in the language you're working with, or somebody like myself who just basically speaks English and maybe a little German, but can I be a decent volunteer?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we do not require any teaching experience or language knowledge of any other language, except you just need to be able to speak English. John, yours is probably good enough. But yeah, that's a big myth, is people say, oh, I really want to teach with Intercambio, but I don't speak Spanish. So no, it's not a Spanish teaching thing. All of our tools are geared to teach English to groups of people or individuals from anywhere in the world. So some of our classes have people from 10 different countries. So it doesn't help to speak one of their languages and leave the other 9 out.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Good question.
Okay, great. Thank you, John and Lena. Next question is Bill Anderson. Bill.
Hi, Lee. Thanks for joining us today. My question is about the 5 questions you posed to us. I think for most of us, I'm sure it's no surprise that the natural sort of American cultural answer to most of those questions is, or perhaps all of those questions, is agree. And I'm curious whether you could talk to us a little bit about the cultures that you drew the sort of disagrees from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. A lot of different cultures. So if you look at some of them, it's nationality is a big part of it. In their country where they're from, it's rude to enter a class quietly, or eye contact means something totally different. It also has to do with your family status. Like I said, did you have 10 siblings growing up or 0? The saying hi to strangers one, that has to do with gender. It could do with religion. It could do with, did you grow up in a big city or a small town? Like in a big city, people are like, why are you saying hi to me? Versus a small town, it's like, why didn't you say hi to me? So there's a lot of factors. We have this kind of wheel that shows all like race, nationality, income, that, income and race are big factors in the question about what do you do for work. So I was reading a book about white privilege, and that was one of the questions. It's like, that was a very, white question to ask. And I was like, oh, well, I've been asking that my whole life. I never thought anyone would be offended by asking, what do you do for work? But now it's like, okay, now I know what might be offensive about that. And it's not about walking on eggshells with every interaction we have, but it's more learning about, why do people see that differently? Why might people be offended by that? So yeah, short answer, I guess, is a lot of different cultural factors, but that's a good question. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next question is Cassidy Murphy. Cassidy.
Hey, Lee, that was a great exercise. And we had a lot of the conversations that you're describing about big city versus hometown, and do you do that on the street versus on a trail saying hello, for example. But so that was really, really interesting. My question, you had said in your presentation that people really enjoy the online classes, that it feels like you are creating connections and communities. And I'm wondering, how do you create the intimacy of a conversation that you don't have when you're in person, like online versus in person? We're dealing with that ourselves because we're usually meeting in a big room and we get to sit together and have conversations about, wow, that was a great presentation or whatever. So I'm just interested.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it obviously depends on the group and how engaged people are. Part of it's about, I think, setting the expectations up front about, being present. I don't know how many of you are checking your email during this, how many of you are actually like really fully here with me. And that's okay. And then one of our teachers, I was at a last day of class online, and he thanked his students. He said, thank you. You don't just show up on the screen, like you really show up. And I think there's just a difference between really showing up and just showing up on the screen. So yeah, and I think, if the conversations are interesting, people engage. If it's not relevant to them or not interesting, they'll check out. And so that's just, the reality too.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Question.
Very good. Yeah, thank you. Meryl, go right ahead with your question.
Hey, Lee, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
I shared with our small group, something I'll share with our larger group, is that when I taught at a small college in Arizona, we had a number of Navajo students in the class. And I quickly learned that eye contact in their culture was considered rude. It wasn't a disengagement. So yeah, it just says that we need to be sensitive to other cultures. So I have a specific question I hope maybe you'll help me with. I wonder how you value the phonics approach to pronunciation and learning a second language versus immersion.
Yeah, I love teaching pronunciation because that's one of the biggest frustrations for English learners. It's like, I learn the vocab, I learn the grammar, and then I speak to people and they're like, what? And so, I could talk about it for an hour, but my 30-second response is, most important thing about pronunciation is that when they speak to people, they're understood. So whatever approach, teachers have all kinds of different approaches to teaching the vowel sounds or the consonant sounds, or some love tongue twisters, some hate tongue twisters. There's no like right or wrong. Whatever works with your individual students to make them better understood, do it. And I also, part of the cultural workshop I do is about how we as native English speakers can communicate better with English learners, not by speaking their language, but by modifying our English and by tuning in a little bit more. Like the example I give is, a lot of our students will say, where do you leave? All right, and most people will be like, oh, they're asking, where do I live? But they're not pronouncing live. They're pronouncing live as leaves. Oh, I live in Broomfield, right? Other people will be like, where do I leave? That doesn't make sense, right? So don't be that second person, right? Make an effort, tune in, understand that, it's a different, it's a challenge. And I also have a whole set of like tips on how to speak in a way that's not condescending, but that allows people to better understand you when English is not their first language.
And when they immerse themselves in another culture through jobs or where they have to speak the language all the time, what does that do?
they learn a lot faster. You know, if we have students who only go to English class and that's the only English practice, they learn at, this slow pace. If they go to English class and they're forced to speak English at their job every day, they're going to learn fast because they have to. So that's a big factor. Yeah.
That's what I found too.
Yeah. Practice is everything.
Okay, great. Susan Connolly, would you ask your question?
Thank you. Hey, Lee,
Hello.
will you describe more how the community conversations work? You mentioned, speed dating. Will you tell folks how that plays into it?
Yes. So just to be clear, it's not actual dating. There's no making out in person or online. So yeah, the way it works is online right now, you will sign up and you'll go to a 30-minute online orientation, and we'll talk about how it works, how it's structured, expectations, how to do it well. And then the following day is the actual community conversation. So you will be given a link to a specific level, and you can tell us if like, I really want an upper level or lower level class. You'll get the link, you'll go directly into that class, you'll pop in on the screen, you'll say, oh, you'll see all the level 5 students, and then the teacher will put you into a breakout room with anywhere from 1 to 3 students, depending on how big the class is, and you'll have a conversation with them. And then you'll rotate after 15 minutes and then rotate a third time and then come back with the whole group again. And it's very, people just love it. I'd say, 98% of the time people have a wonderful experience. People just like the opportunity to talk with people they would not normally talk with. And we provide enough structure, not too much structure, but enough structure to really make it feel safe. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Next question goes to Scott Nelson. Scott, are you ready? Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, okay. I think you've already addressed this in one sense, but I was wondering about, I see you offer a lot of English classes. What about people who want to learn Spanish? Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, there are some good Spanish classes out there in our community. Some were started by former students of ours. I mean, there's also a lot you can do online. It depends on how much self-discipline you have. Right. That's the short answer. Can you, are you a Duolingo person? Do you need a private tutor online? Do you need a, class that you're attending with a group of people? But another suggestion for anyone trying to learn Spanish, there's so many words that are similar in English and Spanish. So start with the words that are similar. There's like what we call cognates. You could have 200 words easy in Spanish that are just very similar. That's my personal recommendation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, great. Next up is Marcia.
This is actually kind of like the last question. I just, we have such a rich, group of Spanish speakers in the state, and, it'd be really nice if we could be bilingual. Have you ever considered, creating a platform for English speakers to learn Spanish, in the same kind of process?
Yeah, we have. There's a whole host of reasons why we haven't done it, but we've definitely had the conversation a lot over the years. I mean, part of it is because there's a much more urgent need for, immigrants here to learn English than for us to learn Spanish in general. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason is around access and resources. Like, more of the people who want to learn Spanish, there are classes you can pay for that are great. And so that's, there's access in that space given the resources, whereas in our space, there's a lot of unmet, needs still. But something we'd love to do, if time and money were unlimited, we would definitely do it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marcia, and thank you, Lee, for that. Bob Stunkel, go right ahead.
Over these 20 years, Lee, I'm sure that your relationship with the immigrant community has also had to be innovated and changed. And but what becomes the access of Intercambio to the immigrant community? Is it largely through social service agencies, school districts, and is there any advocacy arm that has also developed out of Intercambio?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've been talking about that a lot recently, and we formed an advocacy subgroup of our board. I'll start with that. We don't do a lot of direct advocacy because there are groups that specialize in that, like the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition. They are dedicated to that. There's several organizations in Colorado that are focused on that. So for people who are interested in, more strongly in advocacy, we send them to that, those groups, and we support those groups, and we're we're members of those, but we do minimal direct advocacy like that, like policy change. And then as far as accessing our students, most of it at this point is word of mouth. When we started the program, the other co-founder, Sean, was knocking on doors in mobile home parks, handing people flyers. And we still, partner with schools and other nonprofits and health agencies and places like that to get the word out. We've done some radio ads in Spanish that have attracted a ton of people. So yeah, it's really like just trying to reach people in whatever way. Social media is big these days. So word of mouth is still the biggest because, especially in the immigrant community, it's scary to go to a new program, so it's like, oh, my friend told me this is a good place and people are friendly and welcoming, so I'll go. So at least half is through word of mouth.
Very good. That is really built.
Thanks.
All right. Susan Buchanan, would you mind unmuting yourself and ask your question?
Hey, Lee.
Hello.
How are you? Long time no see.
I know, I miss all of you.
So I was wondering how COVID has impacted your ability to provide services, if at all, or how you've been coping with this new pandemic issue.
Yeah. So, at the beginning was a lot harder because a lot of students just didn't have the internet access. They didn't feel comfortable. And now more are feeling comfortable. Some of them are still haven't engaged, unfortunately. They just have too much going on. Their schedules are crazy. They got sick. A lot of our students got sick, which is unfortunate because they're frontline. It's the immigrant community a lot harder. So yeah, I'd say, for some people it's been a better situation as far as the online learning, and for others it has stopped their access. So yeah, it's kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
And we're actually, we're part of an initiative right now to of kind of an education initiative to encourage people to get vaccinated when it's available for them, because there's a lot of hesitation in communities of color around getting vaccinated because, good reasons, history and things that, I would also be wary if there was history, the history that they experienced. So that's some education we're doing too.
Right. Well, keep up the great work, Lee.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, we have about 3 more questions. So is that okay with you, Lee?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, wonderful. Chad, go right ahead.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, Lee. Question for you in terms of kind of going back to the language part of this. Anecdotally, in my work with both inbound and outbound youth exchange students, and in my study of French, I've kind of noticed that there are 2 types of people. There's people that either understand better, or there are people who are better at speaking.
Yes.
And it's all anecdotal for me. So is there any scientific aspect behind that, or is that a reality that you guys have seen?
Yeah, it's definitely a reality. I think there are a lot of factors underneath that. There's also people, who can read and write a lot better than they can speak and understand. I think a lot of that has to do with how they've learned, how they gotten to the point where they are. Was it more through, I didn't take a lot of classes, I was just immersed in it. Those people tend to understand and speak, are be able to speak a little bit better and understand more. But yeah, I think a lot of it just has to do with your ear also. We just have different language ears. Some people pick it up faster than others. It has to do with age, unfortunately. It's the older you get, the harder it gets with language as our brains solidify more. So yeah, I think it would be interesting to kind of explore some of that science more around that.
Okay, Bill Meyer, would you ask your question?
Hi, Lee. My question, I guess, may be a little bit too political, but I'll ask it anyway. You sort of start from the assumption that multiculturalism is good. You probably are aware that the now former Secretary of State, in the last speech he gave before the inauguration, decried multiculturalism and said that the strength of America is a belief in a shared culture. I don't think there's agreement on that issue in the country, whether multiculturalism is or is not good. How do we decision on that as a country? And maybe that's outside Intercambio's ambit, but it's an issue we're all going to have to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I'll stay apolitical with my response and just say that, our belief is that communities are stronger when you have different perspectives and different, ways of seeing things, as opposed to just a singular way of seeing the world. So, that's some people will say diversity adds strength, and some people will say diversity is a nuisance. So we're more on the, it adds strength to an organization, to a community, to a school. So yeah, I mean, you can't force people or force everyone to agree or disagree with that, but I think people just form their own ideas about that. But yeah, it is a different story when there is an agreement on that.
Okay, and then the last question goes to Marlene. Go ahead, Marlene. Oh, nope, you just put yourself on mute again, Marlene.
Sorry about that. My question actually it falls hand in hand with Bill Meyer's question. My grandparents were immigrants, and they came, from Europe. And when they came to America, there were no bilingual programs. They were forced to learn English. And so this is a politically charged question, and I don't want to, sound negative asking it, but there is so much Spanish available in our country. When you go into driver's license places, they have everything in English and in Spanish, and grocery stores, and you've got packaging and instructions coming in English and Spanish. So do you think that's hindering immigrants from learning English, that we've made it too easy for Spanish speakers to not learn the language? And like I said, I don't want to sound negative.
No, it's a great question. It's something we've talked about also. I think it's a conversation to have, because to some degree, it does decrease motivation to learn English if everything is in your language. And at the same time, it's like you're already at a disadvantage in a lot of ways. And by not having things in your language, that puts you at a greater disadvantage. So it's a very not black and white issue. It's a complicated one that, I see both sides of it for sure. That being said, I strongly believe that all super critical, emergency services need to be available in people's languages, because a lot of them have just come here, and you can't expect someone who's been here for 6 months or a year, or even 3 years, to be able to, have dominance of the language. So that's the other reality, is there are people who, are more recent immigrants, and we can't expect them to just learn boom like this. And if we don't have things accessible for them, they're at a greater disadvantage. So, and as the other point too, if you give too much, there's no motivation. So good question. We could talk about it for hours.
If I could jump in there, Lee. What I found is that the first generation did not learn English well at all. And that's where most of the stereotypes are made, that they're not going to learn. But the second generation, especially Latino students I had, spoke impeccable English, although they made the same grammar mistakes that American students make writing. But their English was fine. So I think all we have to do is be patient with immigrants. And the next generation, they don't assimilate necessarily, but they become part of the language culture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, very good. Well, I know that Susan Connolly has something she'd like to say to you, Lee. Thank you.
Lee, we are so grateful for your presentation today. Thank you for what you've created in Intercambio and how it evolves, and how you are sharing and creating resources that impact not just our community, but across our country. Thank you for introducing us to the concept of cultural humility. Thanks for helping us break the ice on using breakout rooms. And I would say, Thanks for sharing about the community conversations. I know Norma Portnoy has been a participant. I participated for the first time late last year. I'm already signed up for March, and it's something I intend to do quarterly going forward. As you may know, Rotary has been a leader in the effort to eradicate polio in the world. The effort is, we're very close, but the effort is not quite done. In thanks to you and in your honor, Boulder Rotary Club will donate 100 doses of polio vaccine to the Polio Plus eradication campaign. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you all for your engagement, your good questions, for all your support. This community has been really great to us. We've got great team and great community to make this happen. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Lee. Thank you, Susan. That was a great conversation. And, you know, my grandparents also came over from Scotland, and apparently the boys in Scotland were wearing short pants or long pants, I'm not sure, but the boys here were wearing the other pants. And so they had to go out and buy clothes right away to look like they weren't just right off the boat. So that was the thing, right off the boat. So apparently clothing was an issue then. Anyway, again, thank you so much for making us think, and we learned a new skill today, which is really important. I think that would be really fun to use again. So really appreciate all of that. Thank you so much.